All right, so I promised to bring you back into this painting. Well, I'm getting to a point where I'm going to work on one of the next things that I wanted to show you. And I thought I was going to get to the cabin first, but it makes more sense for me now to work on the trees because as I work my way down, everything is becoming a pretty nice finished quality. There's still some details I want to work in the hills, and I want to blend that sky a little bit more, but it's getting close, and I'd like to bring it all down at the same time. It just kind of makes sense to finish this corner, and then I'll move further down into the area of the cabin, and then the water and the foreground. So right now, I'm going to show you how I make these trees. Now what I've got here are the indication, the idea of some big, maybe ponderosa pine trees, just some big pines sitting right here. But there's not a whole lot of work done to them so far. It's obviously very rough. I've painted over them in many spots. So you could almost imagine that they're not even there. We're going to start from the very beginning. And what I've got here is titanium white, burnt sienna, cad yellow, then I have black, cobalt blue, and this is one of my more favorite colors for doing foliage that's being illuminated by sunlight. It's called green gold, and when mixed with white, it's very bright and vibrant. So, and I should also say that I had a question yesterday on the video that I did about the sun. Why do I have liquitex soft body for the white and then also the blue, but then these are golden fluid acrylics, the yellow is also liquitex. It's because these three colors do not take a lot. You just need a pinch of each color, usually, especially black or green gold, or maybe if I'm using red, you just need a tiny amount and it's going to make a big difference in the color you're trying to mix. So that's why I go with golden fluids, because it allows me just to, pick up a little dot of fluid, I guess, and add it to my color mixture. And it's going to really make a big difference. So I like the base to have a little bit more of a viscous feel, just a little bit thicker mixture. It's just nicer for painting, at least I prefer it. So that's why I use liquitex for white, maybe some more bland colors. But what I'm going to start with is I've just got some white on my brush. I'm also going to take some black. And I know I'm using a lot this time because I want to get a base. So it's going to be pretty dark. I'm just taking the back edge of these trees. I'm just taking this dark color and getting that shadow on there. I want the back to be very dark. So that's the first thing I do is I work on the tree trunks. Where they're going to be and what color are they going to be. And I'm only going to go down to about right here where the water is. The lower part of the trees, these tree trunks themselves down by the ground, they can be reworked once I get the water finished. I just don't know where I'm going to quite go with the water yet. So I'm going to leave it for now. Getting all three. I got 3 trees here. This is, I don't know if I mentioned it already, a 1/2-inch filbert brush. There's a nice crisp edge. Okay, so we got our tree trunks. Pretty well established. The back side anyway. Now what I'm going to do is wash the brush. And I'm going to take some white mixed with burnt sienna and some yellow. Okay. That's about it. Just a very bland, lighter color. A lot of white in there. I'm going to set my palette down for this. Try to be a little more controlled here. On the front edge, the leading edge, the side closest to the sun, I got a little bit too much water there. I'm going to dap my brush on my napkin over here. On that leading edge, the one closest to the sun, we're going to create that highlight. Too much. Over too far. Redo it. And just pull it down. Just like that. Easy enough. Probably go right up here. Add a bit more up there. Okay. Just like that. Perfect. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just simply grab more burnt sienna and add it to the mixture. These pine trees have a pretty reddish bark. So we've got more burnt sienna to the mixture. And we're going on the back side of those highlights. And adding more color. Just more burnt sienna. Pretty easy, huh? It's that simple. And we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is take some black and just mix it into the mixture. So now we have, this would actually be similar to like a burnt umber or raw umber, just a darker brown. And you've probably guessed it, we're going on the back edge. This is a little bit darker. We're just taking this in steps, trying to leave a little bit of that burnt sienna, just trying to bridge the gap between the burnt sienna and the dark. This is a really relaxing way to create trees. And if you watch the last video I did on the sun, which I'll post a card or a link at some point in the video up here to that, I'll put it in the description as well. If you watch that last video, I talked a lot about patience. This is just another prime example of just having patience, just trusting the process. Really makes for a nice tree without creating much stress for the creator. Okay, so now we've got kind of 3 steps there. Perfect. We're going to create a 4th layer by just adding more black, more burnt sienna. All right. Same thing, and you notice I've been holding this brush kind of vertically, trying to use the narrow end. And I'm just going to try to go on the back edge. Now the great part about this is it doesn't have to be perfect because, as we know, tree bark is very random. It's sporadic. It's not all the same. So if your brush kind of, whoa, you wobble the brush, that actually is going to help you because we want that randomness in the tree. Okay. That is looking pretty good. I like it. We're going to leave it for right now. And that gives us sort of a base, a blueprint. Wash my brush, and I'm changing to a liner brush. Just a nice liner brush. This is it's called a script. A script 0. So just any pointed liner brush is going to work. I don't want to get into specifics about what type because I really don't think it matters. I switch brands of liner brushes all of the time. And I'm going to roll this liner brush in some black. And then I'm also going to include some burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of white, some yellow. So I guess we're going to just use all colors apparently. So what I want to do is create kind of a brownish color, darker than the highlight that we have. Might get some more white, more burnt sienna. I want that to be kind of reddish brown, but lighter in color. Okay, so I've got just a little bit on my liner brush. And what I'm going to do is carefully start creating lines, shadows. So the bark, of course, is kind of grows in segments. And if we know that there's dark lines around each piece of bark where the crevices are. Don't know if there's a term for that, but we want to create the shadows of the bark, the texture of the bark. And I'm using this brown color, which basically matches about mid-range back here. And we're just going to go over the light portion of it. Just creating lines, trying to connect them all. Just kind of creating a web. Okay. It's pretty good. Let's move on to the next tree. Do the same thing with this tree. Try to go a little quicker this time. Just trying to keep in mind the pattern of the bark. We want it to be somewhat correct. Doesn't have to be perfect though. It can be kind of loose. Our mind will fill in the imperfections. Just have to get that pattern right. Okay, now the last one. Perfect. Let's just stick with that for now. Then, all I'm going to do is I'm just grabbing black over here on my palette. Just black. Good old black. And we're going to move further back into the shadows. We're going to go on the back side of those lines and create some more lines. So these are darker shadows, but we're keeping them further back in the overall shadows of the tree trunk. And so what this is going to do is our tree bark will be lighter as we get to the highlights. The shadows are going to be lighter, and then it gets darker. Everything gets darker as we get further back. So not only does the tree trunk itself get darker, but our actual lines get darker as we move back as well. So now I'm kind of switching just a straight black. This is just a good example on light. You've got to darken things kind of simultaneously all together. So the underpainting gets darker, the details get darker, and of course lighter as we get closer to the sun. And same thing back here. So all of a sudden that underpainting, which kind of looked a little bit weird, we had blocks of those 3-4 lines of color, start to disappear as we add the texture of the bark, which is what we're doing now. And this won't be all that I'll do. I'll also add some highlights. We'll start to refine each piece of tree bark down just a little bit, and that's going to add to it as well. So this is just kind of the base. I'm adding quite a bit of water in with the paint. just to keep it flowing. Okay, we'll just kind of go down to right there. I'm probably starting to go off the picture there. And add a little bit more to this one. Okay, so that's pretty much all you have to do with the tree trunk. And I can show you a little bit. What I'm going to do is just basically pick up the same that we started with, just some white, some burnt sienna, some yellow, more yellow, and I can try to carefully go on the front side. So the pattern that we created individual like leaves of bark, chunks of bark. And on the leading side of each individual piece, we can add highlights. So now we're adding a highlight, trying to go around the shadows we made, and I'm adding highlights to each piece of bark, if that makes sense. And that's something that I can do later. Just wanted to show you how I kind of do that. So it's just a matter of small details compiled again and again on top of each other. And after a while, they start to work together, start to look good. You start to get to some more randomness, which adds to the realism. But we've got a pretty good start there. I could take some of this brighter white color, this burnt sienna. I could kind of go right on the very edge of the tree trunk itself and just kind of fade out some of those details, increase that effect of the sunlight hitting the tree. And what I'll also do is I've just taken my brush and mixed a ton of water into it, just a whole bunch of water. So this is going to be like a wash. And on the outside of the tree, I'm going to wash on, glaze on a little bit of light yellow, and that is going to create sort of a glow effect on the tree, which makes it appear that there's actual light hitting it and bouncing off. Just, I kind of like the glow. I do that with a lot of my paintings. Just adds to it, adds to the creativity. That looks kind of neat. Just a little bit of a glow. Okay. That one's pretty flat. We don't want them to be too straight edged. So I kind of mix that up. Okay. So that's a pretty good start. We've got some good tree trunks. They're looking fairly good at this point. What I'm going to do now is switch to my favorite round blender brush or scrumbler brush. You don't have to use this. I could use a flat brush. Maybe I'll switch halfway and just kind of show you. But we're going to get away from the burnt sienna. I'm going to start with black. I'm going to take cobalt blue and green gold. It's going to make a pretty dark mixture. So we are starting with black. And in little short motions, I'm creating small black pine boughs. Is that, no, pine bough would be the whole branch. What am I trying to say? Pieces of each pine bough? I don't know, they're not pine cones. The leaves of the pine bough? I don't know, I'm not good with pine trees. So I'm creating each one of these with a single motion. Just kind of tapping it on there, kind of creates that right shape. You know, they're round. And there's no wrong way to do this. Just get them on there. Mixing some more color. Perfect. It's going to be beautiful. So a lot of this gets covered up. And you can see all of a sudden our tree trunks, anything you didn't like about the tree trunk, starts to get hidden. We start to distract our eyes from any imperfections. Let's put a couple flyers out there. Some floaters. So, that's all there is to it. This is a base coat. Of course, we're going to add some detail over the top. But we want to start dark. This is going to be much easier to paint the highlights. And I said it when I was working on the sky. It's easier to paint the highlights over the darks than it is to paint the darks over the highlights. Darks can just be very finicky. You can go overboard really easy. You can screw things up easy. It's just a lot more simple to do it this way. Looking good. Create some floaters down here. And back here, you just take some black, just kind of color that in. Bigger chunks. And I'm going to have some sky kind of shining through, so you can see there is some of that, and I'll have to just kind of fix that. I'll have to go over it again. So, not overly concerned about that right now. Okay, just about there. Looking good. I'm going to stick with that. Now, like I said, we want to start with the darks. So that means we don't want to get into the highlights just yet. I'm going to take some black and some white. And I need some more burnt sienna. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna into this. Black, white, touch of burnt sienna. It's still going to be a very dark color, but not a true black. Okay, mix with a fair amount of water to keep it flowing. What I'm going to do is, of course, these floaters have to have some kind of connection to the outside world. And pine trees kind of curl up towards the where maybe the pine cones might be. So we're going to kind of create that curl to these branches. This is much simpler than I think a lot of people might think. It creates a very beautiful result, but there's not a lot of trick behind it. It's just knowing how the paint's going to work. Deploying patience, as I say all the time. So we're just creating some branches, just kind of give that extra effect. There's some other stuff going on here. We'll just put one right through that opening there, just because. Another one right there. That's looking good. I'm going to have one that kind of goes out into here. Very subtle, but I like those subtle details. That's what really adds to everything in the end. Another one that'll just go right through. So these ones that go right through these small openings, they're very, subtle, as I keep saying, but our eyes pick up on that. That's what makes a big difference in the end. Okay. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to keep going though. I am going to I'm getting really brave. I'm going right out into the sky. YOLO. Okay. I'm going to leave it. And then what I'm going to do is go back to our black, and I'm going to add a couple more floaters. We can't leave these branches lonely. Perfect. I'm going to leave it just like that. And this next brush, so show it here. This next brush is called a grainer, but sometimes companies call them rakes. So they're basically a flat brush that's been cut up. And so it's like a rake. It has a lot of space between each fiber. So you get a lot of separate little lines when you're dragging it on. So this works good for creating the pine boughs, the pine needles. But you could also use the round blender brush. I would prefer using this, and you can also use a liner brush. Liner brush will work as well, just takes a little longer. But a rake is a great brush. These are just these specialty brushes. I would say most any company probably makes one. Most art stores will probably have them. It just has a lot of sporadic hairs that come off from the stem there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some blue, and we want to work our way to the highlights. So I'm going to start with blue and green gold. Blue and green gold. Okay, so I've got some color on there, not sure how much. We're going to try this using this rake. Yeah, that's going to work good. So it's kind of hard to see what's going on here because it is dark, but we're basically overlapping each piece individually by just raking on some green, some bluish green. I've got some more water mixed with this. Train is loud. Okay, so I'm just going to go over all these pieces. With green, blue-green. Trying to visualize each individual bough. I still don't think they're called, I think a bough would be a whole branch. Someone correct me on that. Okay. Now, this is going to take a while. I'm going to show you this for a little while here, and then I'll just speed it up. I know you can do this on your own. So we're just adding piece by piece, trying to visualize those needles. So we're leaving maybe some of that black. We want to leave some black, of course. That's the whole reason why we put it on there in the first place. So we're trying to visualize where might the light be hitting and where might it not be hitting. And of course we're going to colorize the part that is with green. We're going to try to leave that black where we think it might not be. The ones, these floaters out here, we're going to cover most of the black on that with this kind of green hue, because a lot of light's going to be able to penetrate through that entire piece, versus as we get into the clumps, that's when it's going to get darker. So we're going to try to colorize most of these outliers. And then get more sparingly as we get back into here. Okay, so when we get into the dark, this big black area, you just got to use your imagination. Where might each piece be? Where might the light be touching? So just using our imagination, just kind of guessing where these pieces are way back here in the dark are. Okay, so I'm going to speed it up here and just finish this out by just adding this blue color. Then we'll go back to the highlights. All right, now we've got a lot of green going on here. It's looking pretty good. Could darken, I might want to darken some, I might have gone overboard with some of the green back here, but that's okay. What I'm going to do now, I'm not going to use my rake to mix the colors. I'm going to take white and I'm going to take green gold, mix them together, and that's going to get very vibrant, very light. This is the color I was talking about. Just gets super, almost iridescent like. And then I'm going to take water, dip it in my brush, mix some water into the paint. So we got a lot of watery paint there. And then I'm going to take that brush and I'm going to push it through. Well, first I need to kind of draw some water off of this brush. And then I'm going to kind of just push it through. Push, I'm not going to pull. And then I'm going to go to each one of these again. Look at that. Just adding some lines, some individual pine needles. Now this is going to take a while, but I'm just kind of going around each one and adding these highlights. Now when I get further back, just take some solid green gold when I kind of get further back into these larger clumps, and we can create some highlights that are just not quite as bright, just a little bit more subtle. So we're only using that really bright color for the ones that are way out here. Kind of going on the back side now. I'm just doing the same thing with solid green gold. I'm kind of going over these ones that are kind of back here. Now I could do this with a liner brush. You could do it with a scrumbler, some kind of round blender. But these rakes work really good. Kind of create multiple lines automatically for you. They don't need to be individual lines either. Sometimes it's nice to just have just a nice soft look. Just a nice soft blend. What I could do, if we want some extra fine detail, I'm just taking out my liner brush and I'm just getting some color. Same color. I could take my liner brush and I could add just a few minor details just to kind of set off some of these ones that are way out here, which I might do. I kind of like that. So you can create some individual lines, but use it sparingly. Just on a few. Some random spots. I'm going to go to every one of these. It takes so long. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's really only going to take like an hour or something like that, but it's a long time to just do this over and over and over. but we're going to get a very nice effect. We're going to have some nice looking pine boughs. Beautiful pine trees when we're done. I'll step back and take a look. Ah, that's looking really nice. I'm just going to add a couple highlights as I get further back into here. Just maybe I'll just take like this one right here and just add some highlights to this one. And then maybe I'll take this one right here. I'll add some highlights to this one. Just a couple though, because we want things to appear like maybe a couple are kind of popping out at us, maybe a couple are kind of hidden back in there. So you got to use these highlights very sparingly, be very picky. And then when we get out to the front, of course you can go overboard. Colorize most of these ones out front. Okay, I'm going to keep going just like this. I'm going to finish up the rest. We'll come back, we'll add some final touches, then we'll be done. Okay, so that's looking a lot better. We're starting to get there. Now, the last thing I've kind of decided here, I am going to switch to a liner brush to add the final touches. And so I'm going to mix this brighter color, nice bright green, gold. And I'm going to continue with, yeah, that's going to look really nice by just adding those final details, just the indication of these little pine needles being illuminated right on the edge. So I'm going to go all around. Anywhere where they kind of touch the sky, so to speak, anywhere where they're on the outskirts, I'm going to illuminate these needles. So a lot of it was kind of created automatically for us. And then at this point, you just add some nice final touches. And just imagine little pine needles. Don't forget about these ones hanging way low. So I'll continue to do this, and I might kind of go back into some of these back here, add some brighter highlights. Sparingly though. You don't want to miss any one. If there's one that should have some highlights because you've put highlights on one that's in a similar position, then you need to make sure that that also gets some highlights, because it can really mess things up by having a few that are kind of ignored or neglected. That's how you really get that nice effect. I'm not sure I like the ones way out here. I like the position of them, but I need to make some corrections on them. Maybe take some sky color and kind of pull them back in. There's some black I don't like. There's some black kind of on the edge, too far out on the edge. Got about 5 minutes left before my camera does an automatic stop. So I'm just going to go as far as that. And I'll probably continue to work on this as I work on the rest of the painting as well. But I think you get the picture. And we're starting to get some really nice looking pine trees. Now I can take, I'm just mixing some blue back with some green gold. This is just a darker green. I can take this darker green, add a few more details to the shadows. Maybe we want a couple of these pine needles in the shadows. I'm kind of changing plans here. I know I said that I wasn't going to use a lot of the liner brush, but it just depends how far you want to go. If you want it to have a lot of realism, you got to be willing to do stuff like this. So I can just start adding detail, very controlled detail, to some of the pine boughs that are in the shadows here. So that's going to make a big difference. Just imagining one sitting right there and then kind of going all the way around in a circle and creating the needles. A couple details back here. Looking very nice. I'm quite pleased with how this is coming together. Maybe I can take last example here is I'm just grabbing some black, just getting some more black on my palette and mixing a very dark green. Now we could go on the inside of these and kind of re-add the shadow. See how we just kind of create effect? That kind of makes it look more three-dimensional. Like the light's illuminating the edge, and then we've got some dark area on the inside. So I can go back and I can start correcting the reverse way. Here's another one that could use a little bit. Here's another one. So it's all about adding texture. Same goes with the bark. You can do the same thing with the bark. Just these little bits of shadow, though, can make a lot of difference on how three-dimensional that each one of these boughs will look. All right, getting very close. I think you get the picture now. And hopefully this has helped you understand how I do some of my trees, and in this case, pine trees. Now I can add some highlights to the branches as well. Don't need to get that picky, but I think this kind of wraps it up. I'm very happy. I'm going to continue to add just a few more details. Some of this stuff is not quite detailed, but it's looking very good. I could just kind of take some more black back with my filbert brush, and I could just fill in some areas, make some larger areas, block them in with dark, and that kind of add to the whole effect. Sometimes you get too many boughs and it's just too much going on at once. So sometimes it's good to just start blocking some areas back in with dark. Very subtle, nice soft effect. But that's looking really good. We've got some great dramatic looking pine trees. I don't want anything to be too bright here compared to the sun. We want everything to be kind of nice, dark, and dramatic. So at this stage, I'm going to move on to the next part. Again, I will add some details, but we're pretty much there. Well, as always, thank you so much for watching. This painting has yet a long ways to go, and I'm going to be getting into the water and then the cabin, and the cabin I think will be the next video. I know I said that in the last video, but I think for sure the next video will probably be the cabin. I said probably because things usually change. But after that, I also want to share the water with you, and then we'll see about the foreground. I just don't know where I'm going to go with that yet, so we'll see how that goes. But until next time, again, thank you for watching. Please check out my free print giveaway as well as my eBay auctions and website. Both of those links are in the description below. And of course, ask questions if you have any. Leave those in the comments. I will be happy to join the discussion. Until next time, happy painting, everybody.